All right, buckle up everyone, because today we're diving headfirst into the turbulent waters of healthcare.
You got that right.
We're going deep on a manifesto that's causing quite a stir. It's called Healthcare and Its Victims.
Catchy title, right?
Definitely grabs your attention. And it's written by, get this, a 26-year-old guy named Luigi Mangione.
And not just any 26-year-old, he's the heir to a huge real estate fortune.
Okay, so we're talking serious privilege here.
You could say that, but here's the thing. Despite having access to, well, pretty much the best healthcare money can buy.
He's calling for a complete overhaul of the system.
Total system reboot, yep. That's what makes this manifesto so interesting, right?
It makes you wonder why someone who benefits so much from the system would want to change it.
It's a good question, and I think it speaks to the core of Mangione's argument. He's basically saying that the U.S. healthcare system is set up to prioritize profit over patients.
He even goes as far as to call it a system of exploitation. Pretty strong words.
He doesn't hold back. But he also doesn't just throw out these big claims without backing them up. He actually connects his argument back to historical revolutions, which I thought was a pretty fascinating angle.
Really? How does he make that connection?
Well, think about the American and French revolutions. Those were all about dismantling oppressive systems, right? Toppling the old hierarchies, fighting for liberty and equality.
Yeah, I remember learning about that in school.
Right. But Mangione's point is that those revolutions, while they achieved a lot, didn't completely erase inequality.
They just replaced one form of power with another.
Exactly. So in the context of healthcare, he's arguing that we might have gotten rid of kings and feudal lords.
But we've ended up with a new kind of power structure.
One that's driven by corporations and their relentless pursuit of profit.
So he's saying that this profit motive is actually what's exploiting people.
That's the crux of his argument. And he sees it playing out in every aspect of healthcare, from insurance companies to pharmaceutical giants to hospitals themselves. All these entities, he claims, are ultimately driven by the bottom line.
Even if it comes at the expense of patients.
Sometimes, yeah. Now, whether or not you agree with him, it's a pretty thought-provoking argument.
It definitely makes you think. But isn't it a little idealistic to think we can just eliminate profit from such a complex system like healthcare?
It's a monumental challenge, no doubt about that. But to really get where Mangione is coming from, I think it's helpful to look at the work of someone who had a similar critique, but in a different context.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Who are we talking about?
Friedrich Engels.
Wait, as in Karl Marx's partner, the Communist Manifesto guy. What does he have to do with American healthcare?
I know, it seems like a bit of a leap, right? But bear with me. Mangione's critique of the healthcare system actually has some striking parallels with Engels' critique of capitalism as a whole. Remember, Engels was all about exposing the ways in which factory owners were profiting off the backs of their workers.
So he was looking at the exploitation of labor.
Precisely. And Mangione sees a similar dynamic happening in healthcare today.
Meaning?
He's saying that just like those factory owners back in the day, today's healthcare corporations are driven by profit, sometimes to the detriment of the people they're supposed to be serving.
So they're both essentially saying that this inherent pursuit of profit can actually harm people.
Yeah, that's the common thread. They both see this built-in tension between profit motives and basic human needs. Engels saw it in the factories of the 19th century.
And Mangione argues we're seeing it in hospitals and clinics today.
Precisely. But of course, there's some key differences between their perspectives, too. It's important to acknowledge that.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, the groups they're focusing on are different, right?
You've got Engels looking at industrial workers.
And Mangione focused on patients. Different players in different systems.
And their approaches are different too, right? Engels was this big picture thinker, analyzing entire economic systems.
Yeah, his work was very theoretical, very systematic. Mangione, on the other hand, is offering a more personal, more grounded critique, you know? It's less about grand economic theory and more about the human cost of a system that prioritizes profit.
Trying to bring those big abstract ideas down to the level of everyday experience.
Exactly. He's saying, look, this isn't just some academic debate. This is about real people struggling to navigate a system that often feels stacked against them.
So he's trying to bridge that gap between these big, complex ideas.
And the lived reality of patients.
That's a powerful approach, and probably one that resonates with a lot of people.
I think so. Especially those who've had to deal with the frustrations and injustices of the healthcare system firsthand.
Okay, so Mangione's laid out this pretty scathing critique of the U.S. healthcare system. But he doesn't stop there, right? He actually offers up some solutions. Or at least some ideas for how to fix things.
You bet. He's not just complaining, he's actually trying to spark some real change.
That's what I like to hear. So what's his grand plan? What does he propose we do about all this?
He lays out 4 main proposals, kind of like pillars for a new healthcare system.
All right, lay him on me. What's the first big idea?
First up, and this one's the most radical, he says we got to get rid of the profit motive in healthcare. Completely eradicate it.
Whoa, hold on. Eliminate profit altogether. How's that even possible? I mean, isn't profit what drives innovation? Don't companies need to make money to invest in research and all that?
That's the classic argument, right? And Mangione addresses it head on. He's basically saying that we've got it backward. He thinks a system driven by genuine concern for patients, actually caring for people, would foster a different kind of innovation.
So he's not saying no innovation, just a different kind of motivation behind it.
Exactly. Instead of pouring money into treatments that rake in the biggest profits, we'd be investing in solutions that truly improve lives, regardless of the financial returns. Focusing on the things that actually make people healthier.
Okay, I can see where he's coming from. So less about the bottom line, more about the well-being of patients.
That's the core idea. And his second proposal gets at how we start to shift that mindset, how we move away from this profit-driven model.
I'm all ears. What's his next big idea?
Transparency. Radical transparency and accountability. He's saying patients need to be empowered, right? They need clear, upfront information about everything.
About what kind of things?
Everything. Pricing, obviously. Why should healthcare costs be shrouded in mystery?
Right, that's always a frustrating experience.
But also transparency around treatment options. What are the different approaches? What are the risks and benefits? And crucially, what's the reasoning behind the recommendations they're getting?
So basically giving patients more agency in their own healthcare.
Exactly. No more blind trust. Patients need the information to make informed decisions in partnership with their doctors.
I like it.
Yeah.
But honestly, that sounds like a massive undertaking, overhauling the entire system to make it that transparent.
Oh, it would be a huge lift, no doubt. And that actually leads right into his third proposal, which you could argue is the most ambitious of them all. Universal healthcare coverage.
Okay, now we're getting into some really hot-button territory.
Yeah.
Universal healthcare. That's a topic that people have strong opinions about.
It sure is. And there are legitimate concerns on all sides. But Mangione's stance is pretty clear. He believes that everyone, no matter how much money they make, where they live, what their job is, should have access to quality health care.
And he doesn't shy away from that, huh? He just puts it right out there.
He doesn't mince words. And while there are definitely valid counterarguments, worries about costs, government bureaucracy, all that, Mangione contends that those concerns are often overblown.
So he thinks it's doable.
He argues that it's not only doable but essential if we truly want a healthcare system that puts people first. And he actually ties it back to his fourth proposal, which really gets at the heart of how he thinks we can make healthcare more affordable and effective in the long run.
Okay, I'm definitely curious to hear about this fourth proposal. What's the key to making this whole thing work?
Preventive care. Shifting our focus from reacting to illness to preventing it in the first place.
It sounds simple enough. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Exactly. Mangione is basically advocating for a healthcare system that prioritizes keeping people healthy instead of just treating them after they get sick.
Makes sense. But is that really enough to make a difference in terms of cost and all that?
He thinks so, and he's not just pulling this out of thin air. There's actually a growing body of research that supports the effectiveness of preventive care.
So there's data to back this up.
Oh, yeah. Studies show that investing in things like regular checkups, screenings, vaccinations, healthy lifestyle education, all the stuff we know we should be doing.
But often don't.
Exactly. But the research shows that when we do prioritize these things, it can actually lead to lower healthcare costs over time, fewer hospitalizations, fewer chronic diseases.
And healthier people overall.
Exactly. It's a win-win for individuals and the system as a whole.
So Mangione is bringing some real data and evidence to the table here. He's not just making this up as he goes along.
Nope. He's done his homework. He's really thought this through. But he doesn't stop there. He actually goes beyond the U.S. and looks at healthcare systems in other countries to see what's working, what's not, what we can learn from.
So he's taking us on a global tour of healthcare. Where does he take us on this journey?
He covers a lot of ground, but there are a few key stops that are worth highlighting. Let's start with the UK, shall we?
The land of tea and crumpets.
Mm-hmm.
What do they have to teach us about healthcare?
Well, they've got this thing called the National Health Service, or NHS for short. It's a government-run system that provides healthcare to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay.
Okay, so this sounds right up Mangione's alley, given his whole universal healthcare thing.
It's definitely a model he points to as an example of what's possible. Now, it's not a perfect system by any means. They've had their own struggles with wait times, funding issues, it's complicated.
But it's working.
Well enough. And the key takeaway from Mangione is that universal access is achievable. They've been doing it for decades, and it's largely considered a success.
Interesting. So we can learn something from the Brits, even if we don't adopt their system wholesale.
Exactly. It's about picking and choosing, right? Seeing what works elsewhere and adapting those ideas to our own context.
What other countries does he look at?
He spent some time in Japan, which also has universal healthcare, but with a bit of a twist.
What's different about their system?
They have a mix of public and private providers, so it's not just government-run. But here's the kicker. The government regulates prices to keep healthcare affordable for everyone.
So it's a blend of different approaches, but with a strong emphasis on affordability.
That's right. And that aspect really resonates with Mangione because it gets back to his whole point about transparency and fair pricing.
So it seems like there's no one-size-fits-all solution to this healthcare puzzle.
I think that's a fair assessment. Mangione isn't saying we need to copy any one country's system exactly. It's more about extracting the underlying principles, the values that guide those systems.
So it's not about the specific mechanics, it's about the mindset behind it.
That's it. He's advocating for a fundamental shift in how we think about healthcare. A move away from this profit-driven model towards a system that truly prioritizes people's well-being.
And he thinks that's possible globally.
He's optimistic. He sees examples of this shift happening in various countries, even if it's still a work in progress. And he even looks at countries that are really struggling with healthcare, places where the problems are even more acute.
Like what?
He talks about India, for example, which has this massive population and huge disparities in healthcare access and quality. He uses India to show how a profit-driven system can actually exacerbate those inequalities, leaving the poorest and most vulnerable even further behind.
So his critique is even more relevant in those contexts where resources are already stretched thin.
Absolutely. He also looks at Argentina, which has a mix of public and private healthcare, but still faces a lot of challenges when it comes to equity and affordability. And then there's Morocco, which has made some progress in expanding access, but still has a ways to go, especially in rural areas.
So he's painting a pretty global picture here. He's not just focused on the U.S.
Not at all. He sees this as a global issue, and he's drawing on examples from around the world to both support his critique and highlight potential solutions.
It's impressive how much ground he covers in this manifesto. He's clearly done his research. I don't know about you, but my head's spinning a little bit.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. We've bounced around from historical revolutions to Karl Marx to healthcare systems all over the planet.
Mangione really takes us on a wild ride, but it all comes back to this central question, right? What should healthcare be about? Profits or people?
Exactly. He's trying to shake us out of our complacency, make us question the assumptions we've been making about healthcare.
So after this whirlwind tour, after all these arguments and examples, what's the takeaway for our listeners? What does he actually want us to do?
Well, he's not laying out some step-by-step action plan. It's not that kind of manifesto. It's more about sparking a conversation, getting people to think differently.
Okay, so what kind of questions does he want us to be asking ourselves?
He wants us to really grapple with what we value most in healthcare. Do we want a system that prioritizes profits above all else? Or do we want one that truly puts people first?
He's pushing us to imagine a different reality.
Right. A system where everyone can get the care they need without going broke. Where doctors are making decisions based on what's best for their patients, not what's best for the insurance company's bottom line.
It's a compelling vision, no doubt. But I gotta be honest, it also feels incredibly daunting. Can we really change a system this big, this entrenched? Especially in a country as politically divided as the U.S.
It's a massive challenge, no question. But I think Mangione would say that change always seems impossible, right? Until it happens. And sometimes all it takes is a spark, One person's passionate argument, a group of people who refuse to accept the status quo.
And that spark can ignite a movement.
Exactly. And that's what he's trying to do with this manifesto. He's planting seeds of doubt, seeds of hope, seeds of change. He's saying, look, we don't have to accept things the way they are. We can demand better.
And maybe that's where our listeners come in.
Absolutely. This deep dive was just a taste, a glimpse into Mangione's ideas. We really encourage everyone to read the whole manifesto for themselves. We've got a link to it in the show notes.
Check it out, form your own opinions. And we'd love to hear your thoughts too. Hit us up on social media. Let's keep this conversation going.
Because this isn't just some abstract debate, right? This is about our health, our lives, our futures.
Exactly. And as Mangione so provocatively puts it, maybe, just maybe, we're on the verge of a revolution in healthcare.
Who knows? But it starts with conversations like this, so keep thinking critically, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep. Until next time, folks.